Alright folks, so if you watched my last video, I told you that neuroscience is not really the silver bullet many people make it, right? Because neuroscience alone doesn't really tell us much about what we can do in the classroom. Well, not necessarily. But we can look at the science of learning or mind-brain education to think about how those sciences, including psychology and even education, can help us impact our practice and get our students to reach more effective or better learning outcomes. And today, that's exactly what I'm going to discuss here with you. I'm going to talk about 3 evidence-based strategies that you can start using right now, unless you're not teaching. You can start using when you start your next class. How about that? And hopefully they will help you help your students learn better. So let's get to it. By the way, if you are here with me, my name is André Hedlund. I recently started this channel. I'm recording a couple of videos that I think might be useful, but I got excellent feedback and I'm trying to do what somebody told me because maybe that's better, and then I would actually love if you could share your opinion. So, I'm kind of new to making more professional looking videos. I've always made videos, so I'm trying to make sure that the sound doesn't scare you, all right? So I always include a soundtrack, like a background tune for the video to be more exciting, but right now I'm actually not going to do that. So there was a tune at the beginning when I introduced the video. Now there is no more music whatsoever. Please, if that's better, let me know because, feedback is awesome. I love it, and I think we should get it more often. Now let's talk about 3 evidence-based learning strategies that can actually help you prepare your lessons and deliver your lessons in a way that hopefully, again, there's no magic formula, right? So hopefully will help your students achieve more. And I wrote a paper with my colleague, Hall Houston, about this. You can find the link somewhere here. I think it's very useful if you actually go to the text after you finish this video, because I'm not going to give you as many strategies as the text. I'm just going to cover the basic principles, give you a couple of examples, and you can find more stuff if you just start doing your own research on the science of learning. Remember, it's not just about neuroscience. I love neuroscience, but neuroscience is done in a lab. It doesn't really tell us that much. I mean, it can tell us a lot, to be fair. But if we are teachers and we are in the classroom or teaching remotely, and we want to make sure that our practice is impacted by whatever the science can tell us, maybe neuroscience is not the best way to get started. You can start from neuroeducation, or you can start from neuroscience applied to education, but make sure that you include psychology and education as well, all right? So the science of learning can help you. The mind-brain education science can also help you. So let's talk about the first evidence-based strategy that I think we should do much more often. It's actually quite easy to do. I do it all the time with my students. I think it actually works quite well. And if you start doing it, you will see some positive results. And that has to do with the idea of retrieving. That's right, retrieving. Now, this is based on the works of many different cognitive psychologists who have experimented all over from decades. And even today, we can find tests like that. But I'd like to mention Karpicke and Robert Bjork, okay? Because they have very interesting work on desirable difficulties. So this is really part of something called desirable difficulties. If you thought that learning had to be easy all the time, well, think again. As a matter of fact, if we make learning a little bit harder and challenging, kind of like going to the gym, like no pain, no gain, that kind of applies here, you are going to get better results, all right? And let me explain how retrieving works. It's the idea that as soon as we get in touch or we are exposed to certain types of information, declarative information, like vocabulary, for example, or concepts, we need to rehearse those things inside our memories so that we can actually consolidate them into long-term memory. But the problem is our memory kind of sucks. So we have to make sure that we are repeating enough. One way we can strengthen the connections in the brain or the neural networks that will form that memory about that concept or that word is by thinking about them consciously, actually bringing them back to our working memory. So if you saw something earlier today, in your English class or your history class, it's very useful for you to just stop and ask yourself, how much can I actually remember about this? And then you would be retrieving. So you're basically bringing stuff back to your working memory and reflecting on those things, right? We can do it right now. How about you retrieve what retrieving is about, right? So you can pause the video and try to think about the definition, some examples, anything that comes to mind, okay? Retrieving is awesome. One of the things that I do with my students, and this is actually quite easy to implement, is, after a block of input or teaching, let's say I'm teaching the postgrad course. I teach language and cognition. So I'm talking about the evolution of the learning brain and language. And I give my students a bunch of new concepts, right? I stop the lesson after a couple of minutes, and then I just ask them individually, just try to remember as much as you can about the things we've been discussing. And do it individually so that nobody gets in the way of your thinking. And then you have 1 minute to do that. Now you can include something in the chat box. You can open your mic and share something. And that's how you do retrieving. That's actually something called free recall. And you can try. It's very, very easy to do, and it works really well. The second strategy that you can try, and this one is also based on the idea of increasing the difficulty so that learning can be more effective, desirable difficulty, remember, is spacing. Now, spacing has to do with basically adding more time between revision sessions. So let's think about this as a schedule, right? So imagine you are learning something on Monday, and then you never really get in touch with that again until maybe a couple of days before the test, because you are studying for the test, right? Your brain is not going to value that so much. I mean, I'm speaking in general terms. It depends on the content, your emotional state, right? But anyway, if you just see something once and you do a bunch of activities just during that lesson, and maybe you do homework afterward, like, on the same day, and then you just see it again a couple of days before the test, you don't see it enough, right? So that means you need to break your revision sessions according to a schedule so that you can repeat or revise more often, but every time you revise, you add a little bit more space. So there's something called spaced repetition that can actually help you. And one of the things that I do, and this is really useful, so I got those bookmarks, the stickers. So you can get them in different colors, and you can use a system like, let's say, red for stuff you have to revise, the next day, because it's really important. So that's why it's red. Then you can use yellow for stuff that you can wait 3 days to revise, for example, and green for stuff that maybe you can wait a week or more. What I normally do is I skip some activities, especially if I'm using a book, an English book. So I skip some stuff that are repeated, and then I add the 3 different bookmarks. Yellow one, actually first the green one, then the yellow one, and then the red one, right? and then my students, they revise, and if they get things right, they remove one of those stickers, right? And then they wait for the next revision. So they will have to do it 3 days after, and then green means 7 days or a week after or something like that. You can read about that in the article that I wrote with Hall Houston, and maybe you can start doing something like that. Another easy way you can help your students work with spaced repetition is by setting due dates or deadlines so that they can go back to certain things with the right frequency. When I say the right frequency, we can't really say what's the right frequency. It depends on many factors. Again, no magic formula. But think about adding a little bit more space every time they revise to make sure that they are actually retrieving those things, okay? And the last one, and this is, there are more. I will record another video, I promise, with more strategies like these ones. But the last one that I wanted to talk to you about today is called interleaving, also desirable difficulty. And interleaving has a lot to do with just studying a block of something, taking a break, and then a block of something else. And this is very interesting because a lot of the research conducted actually looked at procedural memory, or movement, stuff that we do with our bodies, and not really declarative memory. So more skills than concepts and vocabulary. One of the examples is playing tennis. So did you know, for example, that if you had to hit the mark with a ball and a racket, and I gave you 10 attempts to get very close to the mark, but 5 of them would have to be forehand, and the other 5 backhand. Did you know that if you just ask people to mix them up a little bit, like first forehand, then backhand, then forehand, and backhand, so you get to 10, that's better than if you just do forehand, forehand, forehand 5 times, backhand, backhand, backhand 5 times. Because you're interleaving, right? So if you interleave even for conceptual things, it's better. One of the things that you can do, and I love this, is the Pomodoro technique. Yes. Have you ever used this? I use it all the time. As a matter of fact, I plan my lessons according to the Pomodoro technique. I normally give 25 minutes of instruction. We take a break. It doesn't have to be a 5-minute break. It could be a 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3-minute break. Go water your plants, stand up and stretch, pet your cats. Now that I'm teaching remotely, right? My students, they don't bring their cats into the classroom. But anyway, in the classroom, you can play a song, you can play a game, you can ask them to stretch. Just give them time to talk to one another about whatever they want. And that is what I love to call brain break. So you do one Pomodoro, 25 minutes, one brain break, and then another Pomodoro. But make sure that the first Pomodoro and the second and the third are different because you're interleaving. You shouldn't be doing the same thing. Now, this might be more complicated for you to do as a teacher in the classroom, but if you teach your students how to study using this interleaving technique, that could be incredibly effective. Because normally students, they will study for 1 hour the same thing. They're going to work on the same mathematical equations. And guess what? That's not as effective as studying 25 minutes of maths and then going to English, don't forget the break, and then going back to maths again. And one of the things that we can say about this is that when they go back to maths after doing something else, they have to retrieve, right? Retrieving. So retrieval practice is wonderful. So how about you retrieve right now? What can you remember about this video? Maybe you can actually use the comment section below to leave some of your answers. I'll be happy to comment. And don't forget, if you like the channel and if you liked the no sound policy in the background, just my voice, let me know. Please share, comment, subscribe, and make sure that you come back because I'm recording more videos now. Right? See you when I see you. Bye-bye, everyone.